Contrast is, technically speaking, the ratio between the highest and lowest values of the brightness of an image. The greater the gap between the two tonal values, the greater the perceived contrast. In photography, much of the appeal of an image is related to its contrast. And Lightroom, already in the base panel, offers as many as 3 dedicated controls: contrast, clarity, and texture. The best way to understand the differences between the 3 is to observe what effects they have on a series of gray columns. The histogram in this image, which is a graph showing the tonal values of the image, also consists of a series of columns, equispaced and very thin, because the columns of the image are uniform, i.e., each column contains only one tone of gray. Contrast. By bringing the contrast slider to the maximum value, the central columns of the histogram move away. Those at the margins move closer together, increasing the contrast, therefore expand the tonal differences between the middle grays, which will be more clear and easy to distinguish. Conversely, very light tones will tend toward white, turning out to be less distinguishable, and dark tones will tend toward black. By reducing contrast, the opposite happens. The differences between tones that are very light or very dark become more obvious. Reducing contrast is therefore a good way to make very light or very dark areas more legible. Clarity and texture. Clarity is also a contrast control, which, however, acts locally, where contrast already exists between adjacent pixels, i.e. at the edges. By increasing clarity, the columns from homogeneous become blurred. This is also noticeable from the histogram, whose lines widen. This is because, at each edge, the light part has become even lighter. The dark part became even darker. That is, clarity has amplified the local contrast at the edges. Decreasing clarity obviously has the opposite effect. The edges of the figures become more blurred, and the image as a whole appears softer. Texture is, technically speaking, very similar to clarity, but its effects are less pronounced. Let's see what happens with real images. Increasing contrast makes images typically more appealing. by compressing the tonal range at its extremes, makes light or dark details less legible. By amplifying tonal differences between adjacent pixels, on the other hand, clarity enhances the edges of figures, extracting every detail. Beware background noise and skinned imperfections will also be more noticeable. Therefore, it is best not to overdo it with clarity, especially in portraiture. Increasing clarity also has a negative effect on color saturation. Decreasing clarity is an easy expedient to improve skin texture, but again, clarity should be used gently, because high settings, even negative ones, lead to blatantly unnatural results. This is precisely why Adobe has introduced texture, a less invasive control that can be used more casually to make the skin uniform without losing too much naturalness. Especially in portrait photography, it is preferable to use texture over clarity. Also with respect to color, texture is less invasive than clarity and does not appreciably reduce color saturation, not even at high levels. Let's look at some other examples. It is recommended that adjustments regarding texture and sharpness are made with the image enlarged to 100% in order to notice any flaws that these controls may introduce.